Okay, in continuation of our machine translation, one of the most important thing that we have not done so far is the evaluation of the translated text, right. So, in every application that you develop, there is always a testing phase where you want to find out whether application is working very well or not, isn't it. So, the developer usually what he does is he knows what are the inputs that requires for the application and starts providing the inputs when you do the white box testing, right. You know what is what are the internals. So, you start providing all the input to the application and then start testing them on various test cases and then find out if every test case is successful. You give it to the black box testing where you give the functionalities of the application and then those testers would test your application and then provide you the feedback which you would later come and then correct or fix the bugs and then move on. Okay. This cycle continues until your application provides a very stable output for all the given inputs, correct. In the same fashion, when you develop an application in the natural language processing, you also require these kinds of testing. If you had seen many apps, right, the kind of test cases that you prepare, may not be very huge, and the expected output is always known, and they are not a very huge list of data points. Whereas in the case of natural language processing, since it is possible for you to create sentences in all possible combinations, right, meaning you would be able to innovatively create new sentences which semantically and syntactically give you the right meaning. As we mentioned earlier, natural language processing also provides lots of output for you, and then it is important for you to have a very reliable testing mechanism to make sure that your application is doing the right thing, so that you can move the application to the production. To give you an example, in the case of the sentiment analysis, you probably would have given so many different sentences to the application to make sure that it provides the proper sentiments of the input sentence that it has. It also should be able to provide the right sentiment for the sentences that it has not seen earlier, but you would have seen all the combinations of those words and things like that. So, based on that, it gives you some reliable output, and the tester also makes sure that based on certain gold standard that is set for those new sentences, he would compare it and then make sure every case has been passed, and finally pass the application to the production side. In the case of machine translation, it is again an important activity, right. So, when the application generates lot of candidates, you need to test those candidates or the hypothesis that comes out of the translation system. So, how do you do that? Every time when you make a small change, you want to make sure that you have not broken anything and the system outputs the right translation. Is it possible for anyone to test all the hypothesis that comes out of the machine translation system? It is very difficult, right? Even to hand code all the manual translations, we mentioned that it's going to be very hard. So, how are you going to really evaluate those translations that are coming out of the machine translation system? So, for about several years, people have been doing this in somewhat manual fashion. There are certain mechanisms they had, but until the late 80s or early 90s, there wasn't any system that was available to really do the testing. And even though machine translation is around for 50 years, a good standard has not evolved. So, when IBM developed all those models, they also found that there is a need to develop certain automatic way of finding out whether translations are right or wrong. They started developing a few standards, and one of the standards that came out of their stable is BLEU. It is a bilingual evaluation under study. That is the expansion for BLEU. In this, what they tried to do was, how do I really compare certain hypothesis that is coming out of the translation system with some gold standard that is already established. For example, you have pairs of sentences, and then you know for that particular sentence this is the expected translation. But when you use the translation system, there are several hypotheses that is coming out, which is not going to be exactly the reference sentence that you have established. But you need to compare all the hypotheses that is coming out of those, or all the candidates that are coming out of the machine translation system, and then rate each one of them to make sure that you pick the right candidate translation, right. So, for that they started looking at the sentences and try to figure out what could be the possible way that I could automatically compare two sentences. Okay. So, in this session we are going to be looking at the idea of BLEU, and then we will look at how they modify the n-gram precision a bit, and then how do I compare or add or combine multiple n-gram precisions and then give one single score. I am sure you know about the n-gram, right. So, when you have a sentence like this, right, so the bigram evaluation, and then assume that there is a equivalent reference that is available here. So, what bigram or the n-gram precision does is we first start looking at 1 gram, right. So, that is one word, and then find out if it is there in the reference. Take the second one, if it is there in the reference, third one in the reference, and so on. So, you do not really look at the order, but find out whether it is available or not, okay. And then create some score and say that okay, this particular translation is giving you something like, you can have a score of 0 to 1, or you sometimes you give the score in the percentage. If higher the percentage or higher the value in this range, you say that the translation is okay. All right. So, let us see how this goes. So, what I am going to be doing in this class is talk about the idea, and then talk about the modified n-gram precision, and then how do we combine the n-gram precision, and then later I will just give you a demo for about a few minutes on how to really compare two sentences and then get a score. All right. Okay. Comparing the candidate and the reference is very expensive if you want to do it in a human way, right. So, humanly it is an impossible task. I would not say impossible task, it is going to be an expensive task, right. So, you can just bring in thousands of people and then ask them to verify the translation if they are good in both languages, right. So, manually you can provide 10 translation to each one of them, and then if you have about a million, you can divide that among those 1,000 people and then ask them to verify the translation and then rate them, right. So, that is one way of doing it. So, it is going to be an expensive task, and then it is not possible for you to do a real time translation like we normally do with either Bing or with Google, right. So, in those cases it is not possible to give it to a human and say, oh, hey, I am going to be talking to someone and this is going to be the sentence I am going to be speaking, tell me what is the translation that I am going to be having in that language, and then bring in another expert who understands that language and then ask him to verify all that. So, it is impossible to do that, isn't it. So, what we want to do is to see if we can automate the task, whether it is batch wise or in the real time job. So, we need a very quick and reusable and inexpensive method that correlates highly with human evaluation. So, when you do the translation, you want to make sure that it is pretty close to what human will accept, right, as a good translation. So, that is something that we want to provide as part of the automatic system. We also look at the adequacy and the fluency. For example, if you go to a place where you do not know the language of that particular local area, and you know only English, and the person that you are talking to is also someone who knows his language well, his native language well, but he understands few English words. So, in those situations, what do? You just ask him whether he understands your native language, and when he responds no, and he says I know a few words in English. So, you start communicating with a broken English by giving the nouns and subjects, right, not in the very syntactic fashion. And then the person might understand that, based on the understanding of the words that he has learnt. So, you would be able to communicate using broken English with just words without forming a good syntactically right sentence. And if he is able to respond back and then do what you want, we can say that what he have communicated is good enough to talk to that person. Okay, so it is enough. So, those words are enough from his perspective. He has some reference in his mind, and then you have spoken certain words. He compares that and then say okay, this is what this person is asking, and he performs this job. And the fluency is something that is what you are really speaking, right, in a very fluent way, with all those words connected syntactically, and you are doing it also right in the semantic fashion. So, we want to be able to achieve these two goals as well as part of the automatic evaluation. And then it is definitely a boon for the developers, because you should not be depending on the human evaluators who would be rating the sentences, and then you go on and make the change. As a developer, you keep modifying it very fast, and then you want to really see the result of your modification at the end of the training phase. Okay, and then you do not want to wait for a day or two. You want a system that immediately gives you a reasonable output, using which you can start debugging or add additional code to it, so that your translation becomes better and better. So, this is a big boon for the developers, okay, initially. And then we also want to have a good metric that is very consistent. Okay, I do not want to be getting a different result set for the same translated sentence at different points in time. So, it should be a reliable metric for me. We also need a good gold standard as references. That means, we need a huge collection of reference translation that are available, so that we can compare them with the hypothesis that we generate using the machine translation systems. All right. So, this is the crux of why we definitely require this, and then the result of all this is a standard that came out of IBM, and they call it as BLEU. Okay, it is a bilingual evaluation and a study.